Marriage with that pain that we already have, and those core wounds that we talked about earlier, those are negative core beliefs. They're shame-based. And so when we interact in marriage and things are not going well, we're up against a wall, or trying to relate and communicate, those core wounds are still a part of who we are. And if we don't recognize those and don't know what's going on there, your husband could say, you know, one thing, and he means something completely different, but because of that core wound that you have going on, you hear something not what he's saying. And which can easily take you to, it's called the Cartman triangle, but we like to call it the drama triangle because it creates a lot of drama in your marriage. And we got to a place where this was a really common place for us to stay. And back on that other slide, just one of those boxes, I think for me, and I think for a lot of people, is just that hidden place. I hid. It was easy for me to hide behind my relationship with the Lord, my knowledge from Bible college, and then we had 3 kids, and I homeschooled, and I just kept building this little glass house. We went to a big church, and you know, everybody looked nice, and I hid behind that, but I'd come home and just felt so broken and so falling apart little by little, but not really sure, not knowing why, and not understanding what was going on. And it's a slow process. It doesn't just happen overnight. That's the key with those core wounds. You don't just wake up one morning and your whole life is in shambles and you can't figure out why. It slowly eats away at you and at your relationships, at your marriage, your relationship with the Lord. And so we both had a lot of wounds and pain, and it took us to this Cartman triangle a lot. So you want to?
Yeah, one of the things that I did was I was so in my own way that, you know, I would oftentimes come home and be physically present but not emotionally there. And we would get into arguments, and I would say, Hannah, I can't argue about this right now. I got to save something for my clients or for whatever's happening the next day at the church or whatever. So I wasn't giving her that place of not just preference, but first priority, where it's me and God, me and her, everybody else. I would say, you know, this is taking away from my emotional bank account. You know, using all these like buzzwords from psychology world and like just hammering her with my knowledge. And really it was out of self-protection. It was because I really didn't know how to be a man that was leading his wife in a selfless way. So how I would react from my place of pain, instead of feeling like or playing the victim, I would just control her and dominate her. And I wouldn't do it in a I guess aggressive way, but I did it in a very no, it's going to be my way, or I'm just going to feel rejected, and then I'm going to withdraw from you as well. And then all of a sudden it's like ice cream around our house. You know, I would ice her for like days at a time. And what that would look like, I just wouldn't call her during the day. I wouldn't, you know, say goodbye when I left in the morning. I wouldn't say necessarily hello when I got back. It was just a jerk. Like my outside for sure wasn't matching my inside. And any time, now this drama triangle thing only gets triggered when we go into what we call survival mode. Because we all respond to this place of pain in our world through the primitive brain, or this limbic region that we all have in our brain. It's where we get the terms fight, flight, or freeze from. Okay, so when we experience pain, the survival mode, fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, so what happens when we get triggered into any sort of survival response? What fight means is that we either react in kind, we can react aggressively, we can react with control, we can react with anger. It means I'm scared, all these chemicals are flying through my brain, so I'm ready for battle. Let's go. Okay? The other natural knee-jerk response that we have is a flight response, which means I'm scared to death, I'm going to get the heck out of here. So I might physically leave, or I might emotionally or mentally leave. Just check out. No, you know, lights are on, nobody's home. The other type of response oftentimes that we'll see is a freeze response, which means that I'm paralyzed. I just go numb. And it's like I'm just frozen and I'm locked up and I don't know what's going to get me out of it. And there was a lot of times where we would have an argument and I would just get locked up and I didn't know how to move past that, even though I knew all this great head knowledge stuff. But, I can't counsel myself out of a box because I'm not objective. It's forest through the trees. And so we had all this I guess, impound shame of like things that we both knew of how it should be, and then we had this image we were trying to maintain as, the pastor and his wife and his great homeschool family working at this amazing church, running their own private practice, and it was all BS because our outside wasn't matching our inside. So I would trigger that place in Jaime where she would feel like I'm persecuting her, and then that would make her feel like a victim, and then we would just go around and around this thing. And I'm sure that you guys can relate to that in your couple relationships, because we all get on it. But how we get off of that is we have to really unpack that core wound. And Jaime and I did a lot of work addressing the symptoms of those wounds. Like we even sat in front, one of the last teaching things we did, we taught about intimacy and sex. And we thought that was part of like the temperature gauge of what marital union was supposed to be, and we taught the class on that. But we didn't address the core wounds of like feeling accepted, feeling good enough, having that like intimacy is more than just physical, it's actual like connection into me, see? Like we didn't learn how to do that, like we didn't dive into that, not because we didn't want to, but because we were trying like to figure it out, but frankly we didn't know what we didn't know. And what I love about God is that he doesn't leave us how he found us. Like he won't let that stuff lie. And so one of those things that happens is our sin begins to fester, and it starts to stink and get found out. And in that process, I incrementally began to make choices that were counter to everything that I believed. Choices with pornography, choices with alcohol, choices with keeping secrets. And it wasn't until I had made so many incremental choices that I found myself at the bottom of this big hole